day, everybody. It is Calxiyn here, and if you guys enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe for more of the Promised Neverland videos. Today, we are going to be reacting and discussing episode 5. Now, I am doing this a week late, and I did that for a very specific purpose, and that's because this week's episode was a 5.5 with some sort of recap nonsense. I mean, I don't need a recap. Like, the season just started. What do we got to recap? Unless they're recapping, like, season 1 up to the point. But anyway, I was like, okay, well, I don't really need, there's no rush, I guess. Like, I don't really need to watch the recap or react to the recap. I don't think that anybody cares about that. And if there's not going to be a new episode, there's no rush. And so I took the time to, like, do my midterms, all that sort of stuff. And now we are reacting to episode 5. You guys can check out the Patreon for the full-length timer and subtitle reaction. And otherwise, we will do, like, big moments reactions in this video. And then after that, we will discuss. So I hope that you guys enjoy. Oh, okay, they're gonna explain. Oh, see, so they want to eat from a top-class farm. And so this, maybe it's like mass production, like not as free range or, you know, in cages, stuff like that. Almost a year ago. Wait, did we time skip? Hello? Oh my god. Oh my god, what if that's like Emma and the kids and they're all wearing like masks or something? What was that? Oh my god. Like, what if like these are not like actual demons? Like, what if they're just the kids in the masks? Because all the demons have like special face plating. Like, how would you know? Right? You know what I'm saying? Oh my god, this is so fucking cool! I'm surprised no one can smell them though. Ah, Emma's little hair braid! Very, very cute! So this is the time skip, but where did they get the clothes? Is Mujika and did they steal it or did they pay, I wonder? Is Mujika and Sanjun, like, with them? Do they find them like I said? Oh, they're all so much older and all their hair has changed. Oh my god. Oh, come on, Emma. No! This is such a bad idea! Do not fall into the peer pressure! Oh my god. Come on, Norman? I'm just waiting. It seems like someone's blind, bro. Like they don't know where they're going. Oh. Uh-oh. Well, that's, so somebody else was already living here? Whoa, 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 whoa. Wait. Oh my god! Evil-blooded temple? What? What? Who is this old man? What? They know him? Is he just squatting here? I'm so lost. Who is this man? Sir! Do they think they're demon kids? Is that why? He may be like, oh, these demon kids are, you know, fooling around. They're playing games. You know what I mean? Like, oh, come on. This poor old man. Like, he can't see. Like, you know what I mean? Oh, this is so nice! This little demon no-no. This little demon grandpa. Hey, his senses aren't what they used to be, I'm sure. Yeah, don't look at her like that! Oh, he's offering to the temple. Well, that's interesting. Pure food, though? Those apples looked a little sus, not gonna lie. Uh-oh. Oh, are people, like, starving? Oh my god. What if I was right about some sort of, like, revolution or something? You know what I mean? Like, the poor are gonna rise up against the system. Oh. Are they? Those demons do not look great. Yeah, this is actually kind of interesting, because it's like, yeah, they're demons, but at the same time, this is like a weird situation where it's like, there are children that are like starving and shit, and like these demon kids are degenerating. Like, this is just kind of sad, you know? No! Oh no! Oh no, you idiots! Very bad, very bad, very bad idea. I knew it was a fucking bad idea. Oh my god, I knew those two little assholes were gonna get them caught. How did the scent not work? Was it because they were like really close to them? See, look at this older person. Like, that must be, I don't know. I feel like that's Isabel. 'Cause like, look. They whispered something to her. Who is that? Hello? Oh my god, I need explanations, bro. Damn. Whoa, they just cut those guys open. Like, what if these are people that are like also in disguise? Or what if they're like the good demons that don't eat the meat and they want to help the kids, similar to Sanju? Norman! Norman! Whoa, 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 whoa! Was that Norman's voice? Whoa, 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 Norman! Wow. They're really gonna leave us like this? Are you fucking kidding me? Oh my god. And they left you guys with that for like a week, like 2 weeks. For me, it'll only be 1 week because I waited and I didn't get spoiled. Oh. All right, everybody, let us get into the discussion now. It is nice to see you guys again. It has been a week. I explained why I delayed it, but basically, like, this week was 5.5, and I was like, oh, that's useless. Like, I'll just wait. Like, basically, like, I was really stressed out about doing Neverland because I have all this stuff on my plate, and I'm pretty sure that I probably would have included that in the reaction portion, but I just wanted to reiterate it again. So I was like, oh, they're not doing a real episode next week, so I'll just, like, I'll skip a week, and then I'll come back. That was basically my whole plan. And oh boy, what have we come back to? And I know that there's some sort of controversy going on with the manga and the anime. Like, I understand the controversy. Please do not explain the controversy to me. It's not that I don't care about it. I would love to talk about it, but I've tried to record this video 11 times, and me talking about it has not gone well in those 11 takes. Like, I don't know. There's something about the whole conversation. Like, I feel like that would need to be its own video. Like, there's just so much of it. Like, I can't get into it all here. But my general opinion is that this is an anime-only discussion. I am an anime only. I totally understand, like, where the manga, like, disappointment is coming from. Like, I understand how people feel and why they're mad and everything. Like, again, I don't understand the spoilers of it. I didn't look into that. But I understand the basic feeling of thinking that, like, oh, like, they're gonna adapt my favorite thing and my favorite part, and then it doesn't happen, right? Like, I understand that. Basically, like, an arc that was in the manga doesn't seem to be happening right now. Now, I would argue that it's still possible that it could happen and people shouldn't necessarily give up hope so easily, but because I haven't seen it, I can't really necessarily comment on it, right? And so with that all in mind, I'm not gonna get into that too much. I would love to talk about it in a more, like, extensive way, like, sometime else, I guess, but I feel like that for me, I'm just going to enjoy the ride. And I understand that there is a big difference between, like, the manga experience and the anime experience, and that's why people want the anime to stay as close to the manga as possible, because what they're really looking for is that the written word, great. Like, I love books, I love reading, not attacking books in any shape or form, but there are some things that books can't provide, and that is the music and the voice acting and the motion, and you imagine all that. You can imagine that in your head, but there's something about seeing it on screen that is magical. I'm sure that many people would agree with that. So I totally understand, like, the manga and anime situation is not really the same as, oh, we're turning this animated thing into live action. Like, it's not really like that same thing at all, because it's like, oh, well, you already have the animated version, so why not, like, fuck around with, like, live action a little? Like, that was my whole thing with, like, Disney remakes, is I'm like, the animated exists, so why not, like, fuck around with the live action and do weird stuff? Like, you already have the original. Like, it's not ruining the original, it's a retelling, and fairy tales historically have, like, many retellings, so why does Disney keep just, like, doing the copy paste of, we're gonna make this into live action, but then a lot of it is animated anyway, because you can't have, you know, like, a candlestick or, like, real life lions, right? And so, I don't know, like, it just seems pointless to redo the same thing a bunch of times, but I think that that argument doesn't necessarily apply to this, because there was never the equivalent to begin with, because the manga is not necessarily the equivalent to an anime adaptation. Like, a Disney animated would be, like, at least in the same, like, vein as a Disney live action enough where you could, like, fuck around with the live action and then be like, well, if you liked the original still exists. The problem is that the original does not exist in the form that people want it to. So yeah, I just have a lot of opinions, and they go from, like, I understand where the manga readers are coming from, but at the same time, as someone who hasn't read the manga, I like freaky things like that. Like, I love when the author is just like, okay, I'm gonna take my own material and write, like, an AU, because AUs and stuff are usually reserved to fan fiction, but, like, I've always wondered, like, why not? Like, why not? If you're a writer, like, I don't understand why you wouldn't just, like, write your own story, like, write the story, but then be like, I'm gonna write it from, like, my other perspective. Like, I'm gonna write it from this character's perspective. I'm gonna write it gender bent. Like, I've never understood why writers don't do stuff like that, because I love shit like that. I love stuff like that. And so I feel like that with this. Again, it's not necessarily like that, but with this, I'm sort of interested, because I'm like, okay, this is kind of an AU, and I probably would be mad if I saw what we got in the original, but because I haven't, I'm very interested in the fact that the author seems to be taking this opportunity not to just, like, fix the ending that apparently people had the problem with, but to go back and, like, change a bunch of different things. And to some extent, I don't think that you could change just the ending, because everything else leads up to the ending, right? And so I think that if anyone was like, oh, all they had to do was change the ending, that's also a little bit like, because, like, you can't really just change the ending. Like, I can't imagine, like, anything where you could, like, literally just change the ending and then keep all of the middle the same, because all of the middle is building up to that conclusion and all the foreshadowing. Now, the only way that I could imagine that is if some of the foreshadowing, like, overlaps in the different ending that you want, if that makes sense. Like, the journey basically has some overlap with the alternative ending that you're proposing. But yeah, I feel like that they wouldn't be able to change the ending without some sort of domino effect. Like, I feel like that would kind of be inevitable as well. So yeah, for me, it's just like, I'm enjoying the ride. I'm interested in the manga. I feel really bad for the manga readers though. Like, I feel like in my case, it's like ignorance is bliss, basically. Like, the reason why I'm not mad and I'm, like, actually interested in, like, the author basically writing some, like, fan fiction, right? Or, like, I guess a retelling of, like, his own IP or her IP. I am not entirely sure. Like, I'm just interested. Like, I'm really interested to see where things go with all of this. But yeah, so with that, I understand why people are angry, but I'm not gonna really focus on it too much. Like, at this point, right, if what you guys are saying is true, and we've passed the point of no return, no amount of complaining about it is going to bring it back to some extent, unless they, like, cancel it here and reboot the season and start all over again, right? Like, to some extent, if that is true, if we're past the point of no return for this arc, and again, I think that they could maybe put in the arc in the future, like, that's still possible. Anime have done that. Like, we've had, I've watched anime where they've, like, shuffled all the arcs around, like, obviously not the beginning and end arcs, but, like, some arcs in between, like, it went before the other arcs, and, like, everything worked out okay. Like, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood kind of comes to mind, and, like, who knows, we could be in a Full Metal Alchemist type of situation with this. Yeah, and so basically all I'm trying to say is that I genuinely, I do understand where people are coming from, but my perspective is I'm like, okay, well, this is what they want to do. Like, here is where we are. They're already doing this, and so instead of, like, complaining about it, and I'm not judging anyone who does, but personally, instead of complaining about it, I would like to judge the anime based on its own merit instead of it being inherently compared to the manga. So let's talk about Demon City. Woohoo! And so this was really fascinating to see this like little demon town. I thought that it was cool because I guess that this sort of addresses the fact that there are like big demons, small demons, and so Emma and them aren't necessarily out of place. I like all the food vendors. Like I think that this is really cool, and I think that we're getting into a really interesting situation where we have a lot of like moral questions going on. Like Emma even says like he's praying for his family, and like we see these kids and they're starving, and so I feel like that we're getting into like some Attack on Titan shit about like the demon side isn't necessarily bad, and instead it's the people in power that are bad, because like the people in power are like perpetuating like the system and all that stuff. Like I feel like that that's basically where we're going in a very similar way to what Attack on Titan is doing. Like this demon just wants to like feed his family, but the elite in the demon world are causing like all of these like these problems and this poverty, right? And so you can't necessarily blame them, even though what they're doing is wrong. You also sympathize with them because clearly like they have families, they have loved ones. Like they're not human, but they're people, right? Like we've talked about this a lot, but like with the AI debate, for example, like if an AI has the same intelligence as a human being, it's not a human, but it's a person and it has personhood, and that's why it should have rights. Like that's basically the whole thing with the AI thing, is that if something can have the same amount of intelligence or comprehension or cognizance, whatever you want to call it, if they can have the same level as us, they should be considered persons. Or if aliens came, right? Like if aliens came to Earth, they wouldn't be human, but if they were at the same capacity or higher as we are, like would they not be persons? They wouldn't be human, but would they be persons? So I feel like that we're getting into an interesting conversation like with the demons, where the demons are not like monsters per se. Like they're monsters, but humans can be monsters too. It's one of those things where the demons are not necessarily human, but they're people with loved ones and families, and as far as they know, the only way to feed their family is with the human meat that the elites are hoarding. And it's equally possible that we'll get into a situation where they realize that the true enemy is not like, oh, the humans like that are trying to be free, or like, oh, the demons are our true enemy, but it's really like the bourgeoisie, it's really the king and the elite and the people in power that are leaving these people starving because they do eat other things that aren't human. Now, I do wonder about the degeneration thing. Like, I wonder if there is like an actual like biological reason that the demons need to have like human for some reason. And so I do wonder about that, but do you guys understand what I mean? Like, I feel like we're getting into the territory with this show is that even the demons are suffering, and so it's really not the demons, it's gonna be like the elite. And if we can dismantle these like oppressive systems, then like the world can be a better place for both demons and humans, right? Like, I don't know. That's basically what I'm just thinking right now, and we'll get to this. I wonder if these kids are with Norman, because I don't remember, but we'll look. We'll look when we get there. But yeah, then we see, obviously, you can almost sort of see like the humanness under here, so if you're an observant viewer, you could have caught that the first time. Then we have limbs, which is great. Alright, so this conversation is kind of interesting because they say, did you hear another farm was attacked? Stealing children, eh? There's been a lot lately. So a lot lately, like that's actually fascinating, right? Like that's really, really interesting because you think about like, oh, have, you know, children sort of gone missing like once or twice? Like I sort of talked about this. Didn't I talk about like, oh, like demons hopping over the wall? Like I think I said that, like what if demons hop into the farms, take a kid, right? All of that stuff. And so then we have like, oh, maybe there are more escapees, like there are a lot of things to consider. And then we have these guys saying, I'd steal some if I could too. And so it sounds like that there are farm robberies. That it's not even just kids escaping, but it's kids literally, like, maybe they're playing a little too close to the wall and the demon's like, scoop, or maybe there's even, like, this black market thing going on where the guards at the demon, like, gate thingy, like, of the houses or whatever, like, maybe they're being paid off or something, and, like, they bring kids to these, like, people, if that makes sense. Like, they, like, basically illegally traffic the kids instead of it being, like, the adoption and the special brains going to the elite and all that stuff. Like, maybe there's, like, some black market theft thing going on. And, like, okay, I actually started to feel bad for these guys on my second watch because you see that they're basically living in poverty. I also really like their designs. Like, they kind of have facial hair in a weird way, so I think the designs of the demons has been really interesting, but yeah, it's kind of sad, like, this whole scene, like, they're basically starving. So I think that what happened here is that they were like, one for each of us, and then this guy was like, one for both of you. Y'all don't have enough fucking money. Like, that's what I got from that, right? Because then they only take home one, right? They seem to ask for two, but they only take home one. And you can see, like, how small that bit is for them, right? And so, again, like, don't eat humans, very bad. But at the same time, like, I feel like the show is trying to make us empathize with the demons to some extent. It would be nice to get to eat meat from a top-class farm even once. And then they say something like, think the meat from Gracefield Farm is still on the run, and then I like how it pans right to, like, the group, like, obviously, like, you know what I mean, like, this is supposed to be, actually, I think that some of these are Emma's group, and then this character is Norman, I'm pretty sure. So it's funny how Norman, like, if you look back in this episode, you can see Norman's, like, lurking around, so I thought that that was really fun. And they say something, though, I thought in this scene, or maybe it's another scene, but they say something about, like, how only the rich are getting the good meat these days. Maybe they said that before? Oh yeah, all the good meat only goes to the nobles. So again, I feel like that, like, anime this season really said, like, fuck the people in power. At least that's what I'm getting from, like, both Attack on Titan and this. It's like there are, you know, people ruling these oppressive systems, and really, like, if the humans and demons work together, they can dismantle it, because the real enemy is not the humans at all, but it's the rich people. Like, it's the people in power, it's the Demon King, it's the nobles. Like, we're gonna get some French Revolution type stuff in the demon world. That's basically my interpretation as of right now. Obviously, that's subject to change, but it could be a case of they may be like, oh, the real enemy isn't the humans at all, like the humans who just want to be free. Instead, what we really should be doing is dismantling the system and making sure that everyone has enough non-human food. I feel like that would be really interesting if it's like the real enemy was the people in power, and the people in power are not just demons, I don't think. I've had this whole theory that there are also humans in power. Like, there's basically, I've called them HR, like human resources, like quite literally, and there's some sort of like human liaison. We talked about that last week, I think. Like a human liaison that is actually working with the demons to uphold this system. And so I feel like that we're getting into, like, it's not the demons that are bad or the humans that are bad, but there are bad demons and bad humans at the very top. Now, some people were saying that they wish that we saw how they established this hideout and everything. I don't. Like, I feel like that there's been so much, like, I don't know, like, the show's pacing, I will admit, has been a little weird, but I really do not care how they got here. I was interested in how they escaped from the forest. Like, I really thought that Sanjun or Mijika, like, they were gonna basically, like, pop out of there and, like, rejoin, like, in the forest scene, like, from last episode. And so that I would have been interested in, like, what they did after all the soldiers were killed and all that stuff. But would I really be interested in another, like, we're going through the forest and we found this place and here's how we did it? Like, I'm done. Like, I don't want any more, like, montage of how we got stronger. Like, I think that we've had enough of those. I can suspend my disbelief enough to imagine that they went around the forest, they found this hideout, they started to look around at the very top of the hideout, and they saw the town, and they were like, great, let's trade some of our plants in the town so we can get food. Like, I'm assuming that's what they're doing every time they go in. They're like, hey, we'll trade you, I don't know, like 5 cactus for a fish. Like, I don't know what other food they have that would be appealing, or like even those like bugs on the sticks, right? I mean, like, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. So I wonder if it's sort of like that, because they're counting all these things. So I feel like that these things aren't necessarily for them, but they are actually selling herbs in order to get food in exchange. Like, I feel like they're doing that at the demon market. But I really like this system. I like the whole, like, bell ringing thing. I like the lookouts. I really just like the design of this location. Again, it's like, oh, well, how did they get here? I don't care. I don't care anymore. I'm done with montages. I just want the show to, like, get where we're going. And I think that we finally got in there. Like, again, I would be interested in, like, some of that stuff to some extent. Like, I feel like that we're missing some context, like, with what this temple actually is. But, like, do I want another montage of them going through the woods? Like, I don't know. Unless there was something interesting in the woods that, again, was cut. Like, personally, I have no problem with them just skipping to this point. But again, that's just, like, my perspective from, I don't know what was cut, so I can't say what we're missing. All I can say is that if we were just gonna go into the forest to establish this place again and see another another montage, like with the shelter. Like, I wouldn't really like that. And some people are also saying, like, that they probably should have just, like, stretched out all these things more, if that makes sense. Like, they're saying that they should have gotten rid of the montage, like, in the shelter and actually stretched out the shelter so it felt more, like, tension-wise, like that was a meaningful place that, like, you know, we're safe, like, for 5 episodes, or whatever, like, 3 episodes, we're safe here, all that stuff, like, you know, to sort of make the audience feel more immersed and more like that this is an actual, like, safe place, whereas it being gone 1 episode later. I would agree with that. I think the pacing is a little off, but in terms of this particular section, it's like, I just want to get where we're going at this point. Yeah, so they didn't actually get a lot, and so I don't think that they're stealing. I think that they are trading. I don't think that they're stealing. I hope not. But I love how everyone's, like, aged up in their designs a little bit. Like, I think that this girl's hair got longer. I think that this girl's hair is different, so I feel like I really like that. Obviously, Emma has a little braid now. I like this hairstyle. Like, I really like this scene, just showing how they've all grown up a little bit in the 6 months. But this is kind of, like, fucking sad. Like, how everyone has, like, a little bit of potato, like, 1 mushroom. Like, they're really rationing, and you can see that in this scene, but yet they're all still doing their thank you for the food thing, and it's a very stark contrast to how things were in the shelter. I really like this conversation because it illustrates how the resources are running out, but at the same time, like, everyone's like, Emma, relax, like, it's okay, we'll just keep making soup. But, like, I feel like Emma is really starting to feel like that she has failed them, even though they're trying to say, like, listen, we'll all share, it's all gonna be fine. Like, I feel like that Emma really feels like she's failed them. And at the same time, like, does Emma have a point? Like, they're basically eating, like, 1 piece of meat a day, right? And not even a big piece, like a very tiny piece. So at the same time, I don't think that Emma is blaming herself, like, unfoundedly per se, but I think that she is being very hard on herself when everyone else is willing to, like, work a little bit for this. Like, they knew that it wasn't gonna be easy, right? And they're willing to make sacrifices for the betterment of the collective. Now, here's the thing about this radio stuff. This is actually what I am kind of like, about. Like, it's been 6 months and nothing has happened in any of the houses to tell us about, especially with those demons earlier saying, like, oh, like, the stealing is happening more frequently. I'm like, has nothing happened in 6 months? Like, at this point, kids have had to be shipped out, or kids have had to be stolen in this time period. And so I find it very strange that, like, none of that was brought up or mentioned, because they've made this big point of having the radio, and the thing's fucking useless. Like, I feel like that they're not talking about the things that are actually happening on the radio. Like, if any shipments have gone out, I don't think that they're actually talking about it, because they think that people are listening. If any kids have been stolen, I don't think they're talking about it. Like, I think that this check-in, like, they're not on the right frequency. Like, this is all just some sort of, like, formality to give the illusion that everything's fine, but they wouldn't actually, like, say, oh yeah, our kids were stolen over the radio, like, for fear of who might hear them. Like, I feel like that maybe they know that there are interlopers in the communication, and so they're somehow communicating that information in some other way, because I refuse to believe that nothing of value has happened on that radio for 6 months. And I guess something could have happened during that 6 months, but I want to see what happened on the radio. I really like this scene because you see that these 2 kids are basically eavesdropping, and they've decided that they want to step it up. And what I really like about this as well is that it's not just Emma, Ray, Dawn, and Gilda. Instead, it's actually, like, these 2. And I'm guessing that they've almost, like, come of age as well, and I find that very fascinating, just because they've sort of grown into being old enough to talk about these matters. But then these kids are determined to help, and of course it all goes wrong, right? I'm gonna talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, it was not a good fucking idea to bring them. It just, well, on the other hand, right, would they have met Norman, right, if those kids didn't fuck up? But I'm sure Norman still would have found them anyway. But yeah, that was a big, like, oh my god, not like this. But yeah, I like this conversation from Emma, though. I'm starting to hate myself. I thought I knew. I was even prepared. What awaits outside is a world of demons. Living outside means we'll be surrounded by enemies, that we all have to survive, that we have to obtain housing and food on our own from now on. I knew and made the decision to bring them out. I have to protect everyone. So I really like this whole thing of of dialogue from Emma, and it really, I don't know, it just, like, it's so hard to explain, but there's just so much to unpack. Like, I feel like that she's having, like, big coming of age moments, right? I feel like that her optimism is slowly being worn down. I feel like that, like, she thought that Sanjun and Majika, like, had prepared them, that they knew that when they parted that they needed to be ready, but they aren't. But at the same time, like, oh my god, I'm hoping that Sanjun and Majika come back. Like, I cannot believe that Majika is on the poster, like, on, like, Funimation or whatever, but we're never gonna see her for the rest of the season. Like, what was happening with that? Like, I just have so many questions of why they just disappeared, like, why they just fucked off from the narrative. I do not believe that they have left. I feel like they're coming back, but I love this conversation because we usually see Emma as so upbeat and so optimistic and everything, and she's really beating herself up about this. I mean, she's right, like, she can't let them live like this. Like, everyone is basically starving, right? But at the same time, like, I don't know, she's just so hard on herself when they've been doing, I think, the best they can, right? I'm alive right now because I escaped with you. Same for the others. No one blames you, and you shouldn't blame yourself either. You chose the right thing, and so did we. And I think that that's interesting too, right? Because, like, this is surviving. It's not necessarily living, but it's better than being dead. And I feel like that that's definitely Ray's whole point here, is that even though this is like, yeah, they're hungry and they're struggling a little bit, like, at the same time, what was the alternative? To stay there and die? I'm not gonna talk about this too much, but, like, I knew when I saw this that this was gonna be a fucking disaster. I mean, I think that it's nice, though, for the characterization, like, that these two kids want to help and they want to be grown up and everything. I think that it's interesting to see how, like, Dawn, basically, he's, like, the fun dad. Like, he's like, sure, why not? Let's take them, right? Whereas, like, they're just not, like, they do not agree, but I feel like that Emma faltered under the pressure, and I love this because it's like, make absolutely sure that the demons don't know we're human, and it's like, like, some people thought this was really bad writing because it was a little predictable. Like, I did read that, but at the same time, like, I don't know, it's hard because I'm not gonna say that it was bad. Like, again, it was pretty normal, I guess. Like, it was pretty not out of the ordinary. Like, it was pretty tropey, I guess I should say, right? Like, I don't know, like, it's to be expected. It was a very expected thing to have happened. I'm not gonna say whether that's good or bad or not, but I understand why people were like, oh, like, here we go. Like, we already see the very clear outcome of this. But at the same time, I don't know. I have faith in the show. We're almost at episode 6. Like, I'm hoping that things will pick up again and be a little less like this when Norman comes back. I don't know. It's hard to explain because I still think that there's a lot of, like, puzzling and mystery, but it's just not exactly like the first season, because I feel like that there are a lot of just predictable aspects going on, especially, like, in this episode, that are very unlike the first season. So when the bell was ringing, this was fucking freaky, because you just have this old man, and at first I didn't quite understand. Like, I thought that he was just sort of a squatter or something, right? But it seems like that he's actually making this trek, like, for religious reasons, right? Like, he has a little sleeping bag or something, or is that wood? Actually, I think that's firewood. So yeah, he has firewood, so maybe he's, you know, bringing stuff back for the fam, and then on the way, he brings this offering to this god. And so I thought that this was really fascinating, and I like this because it doesn't seem like he can see, given the fact that he has the cane. Like, it seems like that he's blind and very old. Probably his sense of smell isn't great, because a lot of people were like, but how did he not smell them? Well, first of all, they burned a lot of that grass, right? The grass that is supposed to mask their scent. But then the second thing is that, like, this man looks like old. Like, he can't see. I don't know how good his sense of smell is. His hearing's probably not all there, right? He seems to think that they're just demon children playing around. And the other thing is, I keep telling you, this is the evil-blooded temple. What the fuck does that mean? How can you just say that and we're not gonna get any explanation on what that means? Like, maybe this is like an old man trying to tell scary stories in order to get the kids to, like, go somewhere safe, or that this place isn't safe. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it's not literally the evil-blooded temple. He's just being like, ooh, it's it's the evil-blooded temple. Like, you know what I mean? Like how you tell your kids, like, oh, don't go into the woods, there are monsters. Or like, I remember when we were kids, my grandfather, wherever he thought that there was something dangerous, or whether there was something dangerous, and he didn't want us to go there, he would tell us that there were spiders, right? So it was a big thing, like, oh, you don't want to go back there, there are spiders back there. And that sort of stopped us from going, like, anywhere we weren't supposed to go, right? Like, behind things, like, maybe in, like, wood piles that had nails in them, right? Like, just in, like, more dangerous places, like, around, the outside of, like, our cottage and our house and stuff. Like, there are spiders in there, like, don't go in there because there were dangerous things. That has probably led me to some sort of, like, fear association with spiders, because every time I see one, like, I freak out, whereas I don't have that same reaction with, like, ants and stuff. That's probably not great, but I feel like that could be the same, this is the evil-blooded temple, or, like, what if that is the name of this place? Like, I have so many questions if it is, right? Children shouldn't stay here on their own. And so here's the thing I'm wondering with this god, right? Like, I'm like, I don't know, this is such a weird thing to say, but we are in a fantasy world, right? And like some shows have gods to some degree, right? Like you think of, again, Full Metal Alchemist, or you think of Brotherhood. Again, I don't know what was going on in Full Metal Alchemist, but to some extent, like Brotherhood, you have like the concept of like all-knowing, like god-like figures. In Ruby, you have gods, right? And so it's one of those things where, at least I think, it's interesting to say, like, are there really gods, or is this just like a concept? Like, is this just religion? You know what I mean? Like, he's making offerings. Basically, like, is this like Greek gods, right? Where the gods actually like come down and really exist? Or is this just like a religious thing that doesn't actually have any like real god behind it? I know that sounds so weird. But do you guys understand what I mean? Like, there's shows with actual gods. Again, I think the Greek god thing is a great example, right? Like, are there real gods, like, that these offerings go to? Or is it just, like, a religious formality that doesn't actually have any effect? It's like when Sanjun says that, oh, like, these flowers are, you know, like, an offering to the gods, and when they bloom, that means the gods have accepted your offering. And I'm like, okay, but is it really, or is that just science, right? Because a lot of things that people think are like gods, right, are actually chalked up to science. And so with those flowers, it's like, are they really gods? Like, are they really like, oh, the offering was accepted from the god? Like, is it actual magic, or is it people understanding like biology, right, as like religion, right? Because with those flowers, you can make the argument, it's like, oh, well, the god isn't like rejecting or accepting your sacrifice. The flower is just doing a biological response to being put into meat, and then it sucks out the blood because it's a plant. Like, it's an organism. It doesn't, like, there's no magic involved. It's just doing its biological reaction, and people ascribe that to religion. So yeah, with this show, it's sort of like instructions unclear. Like, I'm really still like wondering like whether or not this god thing is real, because if it is, like, they must be pissing off some god, right? Because like they're stealing the offerings. But let's talk about this. So I thought that this was really, really nice, because you see like there's just this little old man, right? And he drops his cane and he drops his apples, and I know he's a demon, but he's just this little old man, this little grandpa demon, and he's like, you know what I mean? Like, he's losing track of all his stuff, and Emma goes to help him, and it's really, really nice. And I know they're all like, what the fuck? But I feel like that this is where Emma especially is recognizing that demons, they're not human, but they're people. And like, this is still a little old man, even if he's a demon old man, and he makes that sort of face, right? And so like, you know, it's hard. I feel like it's so hard to see old people in any kind of distress, at least for me. Like I just mentioned, but like my grandfather, like he's just like such the purest, like little cinnamon roll, right? Like if anything like this happened, like I would hope that a person, like even if he was a demon, I would hope that a person would help us. So I don't know, like I have an old people weakness in that way. So I'm like, yeah, he's a demon, but he's still a little old man, right? Gracious one, I appreciate your gifts and pure food. Please please continue to grace us and our family, right? And so he's like praying for his family. See, demons have families. If only the farms would share more of the meat with us. So yeah, this isn't great, but it does give some idea into the politics of all this, right? At this rate, even this town will soon degenerate and become wild. And so they're horrified, right? Because it's like, oh, this man would like to eat a person, but at the same time, like, you have to keep in mind that what this demon really wants isn't necessarily, like, he's saying he wants the meat from the farms, but what does he really want? He wants the dismantlement of the system, and he just wants, I feel, food in general, possibly, unless the humans do something in, like, the demon biology, like stop them from degenerating or whatever was going on in that other scene. I hope you all can eat better food too. And then he kind of gets sucked in by the darkness. I didn't catch it per se, but it was a really, like, animation-wise, a very interesting and compelling scene. But yeah, like, I just think that the show is gonna go into the direction where it's not the farms or anything like that. Like, it's not even like, oh, I wish I could eat more humans. It's, oh, I wish that the noble people weren't such fucking assholes. Like, I feel like that's probably where we're getting, right? And then they talk about, like, oh, Emma, you know, you're so reckless. How could you help, like, this old man, right? But at the same time, like, I feel like that it's interesting, right? That old demon also eats humans if he finds out we're really humans, and then he brings the offering, right? So, like, that's a bonus, but I'm like, that is sacrilegious. If there is a god, they must be mad. It's interesting that demons eat stuff that aren't human, and then they said if only they would eat other things instead of us, like Sanjun and Mijika. And so what I'm thinking about that is that they could, but that food is probably, like, in a different, like, supply, if that makes sense. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people wouldn't be in poverty if the government took care of them. And so it's one of those things where it's like, the government maybe should provide them with enough food. Like, the only reason I think why they're craving, like, the meat from the house, or that they wish that they would get more food from the house, is because they have food insecurity in other areas. And I really like this line from Emma, like, the even demons have families too, because I feel like that is going to be a big theme in the show in the future. And I'm really excited to see how it pans out. And we sort of see it with these guys, right? Like, are they kind of assholes? Like, yeah, like, obviously I didn't want them to succeed, right? Like, they're like the brief, like, villains of this episode. But at the same time, like, it hurts a lot because they're both, like, older brothers, I guess, and their brothers are, like, suffering because they don't have enough food. And so I wonder, like, what's happening in terms of, like, the degeneration thing that they mentioned, because, like, this demon does not look like any of the other ones, and I'm a little bit concerned. Whereas this one, it seems like that they are, like, not growing properly, maybe? Like, you have, like, this foot's giant, but this leg's not. Like, it seems like they're malnourished, and that's manifesting in a really weird way, right? And so the runaway meat from Gracefield, I've heard they haven't been caught yet. Who cares? I thought we figured they'd be dead by now, but the story is that the farm is still looking for them. They called for more soldiers and increased the reward. Also, they'll be looking for them around here. Around here. Yeah, the highest grade meat might be lurking nearby. And so I love how they're also like, fuck the reward, right? So if we can let them have some of it, both of their degeneration can be stopped, right? And so here's what I'm wondering about that. Is this like an actual thing? Like, they actually need human meat for the degeneration thing? Like, is that why, like, all demons eat human meat? Like, is there a biological reason? And could a point of the show be maybe manufacturing something artificial so they don't need to necessarily eat humans anymore? You guys understand what I mean? Like vitamins, right? We take vitamins. Vitamins are basically, right? We haven't gotten that level yet, but vitamins in a lot of ways are artificial food, right? Like, you can take a vitamin instead of, like, drinking, like, milk, right? For vitamin D, question mark, right? But you guys understand what I'm saying? It's not, like, perfect. Like, we're not just eating, like, vitamins all day, right? Obviously, we're still eating food. But at the same time, like, we in our society have gotten to a point where with some things, right, if we don't get enough calcium, if we don't get enough, you know, iron. If you're, like, vegetarian, you can take supplements in order to supplement your diet. Like, that's the whole thing. And so I feel like that could there be something artificial created to give them the same, like, nutrients that they need to stop this degeneration. Like, I know that this show isn't really a science show. Like, it's more of a fantasy show. Like, I guess I should say it's not sci-fi. It's fantasy, right? But at the same time, like, I kind of wonder if we could go into that direction. And maybe it already exists, but the demons don't want to, like, produce that because that'll ruin, like, the farm economy. Like, the rich demons want the farms to continue for their own selfish reasons. Like, maybe that'll be the whole thing, is there's actually some way to, like, supplement this. And, you know, we're sort of getting that, like, in real life. Like, I heard the other day, that there's this meat that can be grown like in a lab or something, and like no animal had to die for it. I don't know exactly how they do it, but like they made like this meat in a lab, and so I feel like that we're kind of almost getting there. Like if that sort of thing could be popularized, right? Like if it's safe, first of all, if it's safe, but like if it could be a thing and no animals would have to die. Like here's the thing though, would big meat, I know that sounds so bad, like would big meat appreciate that? Like I don't think that they would, right? And so I feel like that in our society, there are a lot of like preventions to putting out more green options. Like if you want to talk about green energy, for example, right? Like some things are suppressed, even though like scientifically there are a lot of benefits and they don't destroy the earth as much, right? Because of these industries and these corporations and the politicians who are being lined in the corporations' pocket, I guess. And so I kind of imagine the same things going on here. Now I like this because again, we see Norman lurking around. I thought that that was really nice. We see that Norman has a bunch of friends, and so my question here is that these can't be other kids, right? Like there's no way that these are other kids, right? Unless they're like grown. And so what I'm sort of thinking is that these could be escapees, like from the cellar, because that was the whole thing is like, I guess I shouldn't call it a cellar per se, but like the rooms in the shelter and everything. But like there was this whole thing that I read where people are like, how could they do that? Like the help thing and not have it pay off. But I feel like maybe this could be the payoff. Like these could be the kids that were like, hey, you know, like everyone's gone, I'm gonna try to find the human world. And instead they sort of have this collective where these are like one rogue escaped kid, two rogue escaped kids. Like they're not necessarily like, they didn't have the same like runaway plan that Emma had, but rather when you hear about, oh, these kids were stolen, like what if it's just like a couple kids, like every once in a while, like one kid escapes in the wild and they all somehow are finding each other, right? Like what if like that's the whole thing? So I skipped the fish scene because like I'm done, but I thought that this was sort of interesting because I like they will only pretend to eat. So the kids have observed that the like older children like Emma and Gilda and Dawn, like they're basically like giving up their food, like they're basically not like eating in order to give more food to the kids, right? If we had something else, so that's why they want to go, because they want to have something else. Like I feel like that they want to go into the market to like get more food. I don't know if they were planning on stealing or what, but like I feel like that they wanted to coax them into going into the market so they could like get stuff. Like I don't know what exactly their plan was. I'm pretty sure it was stealing. I'm pretty sure it was like if we could just get more food somehow, and they were planning on like actually taking it. I thought that this was a nice world building scene. Like you see like a little baby demon and like little girl demon, except she's holding human stuff, right? And so that's not great. But I think that this was like such a fascinating scene, right? Because you just see like the world building of it all, and then these guys obviously bump into them. This is where everything starts going wrong, right? And so I just really like the world building like in the backgrounds. This person with the cane, they're sketchy to me for some reason. They could just be an old person, right? But at the same time, I'm looking in the background and I'm like, how many of these could possibly be like Norman's like people walking around, or people that may be important later? I don't know. That just stuck out to me. That may be just like really, really random, right? But I think it's nice world building anyway to see like this is like a little town and a society and everything. I think that this was a good point. Like, hey, like we can't let them follow us back, so we can't go back to the hideout. We gotta like really lose them first. And so I thought that that was like a really great scene. I really liked it. Again, you have some of like Norman's people lurking around, so I thought that that was fun. But yeah, it's hard to tell whether or not they're demons, and I guess I'll look at that later. Like obviously you can tell like you see the human skin under there, but I would like to look at those screenshots a little more closely when we get there. Like even you have this guy and he's looking, right? And so he's a little suspicious, so I'm a little concerned about that, right? But see, you have this big one that's on Norman's like team or whatever talk to this like little one, and so I don't remember if this little one was one of ours or not, or if it was one of their little ones. But anyway, like I feel like that these big people are gonna be like interesting and important, right? I think that may be Gilda, actually. Is that Gilda and Dawn? I don't remember all their disguises. Okay, why don't I go like all the way back and see who's like in the group and everything. Okay, so yeah, like I think, okay, yeah, because this person has the bow, right? So is that Dawn, and then that's Gilda? So I feel like what happened is that this big person, let me know guys, but this big person like leaned down to Gilda and said, I'm with Norman, right? Like something that like no one else would possibly know, right? Like we're here to help you, follow me. Because it seems like that they do listen to her, right? Because they go into this direction and then they come back. I think that they whispered something. Maybe they were just, yeah, I mean, it looks like they whispered something, right? And so I feel like, and then she looks back up at them, right? And so I feel like that this was definitely like a thing. I feel like that this was a thing. So cool. Like, I'm really interested in Norman's whole thing going on here. And I love this. See, it's a person with a stick again. So, like, every person with a stick, I'm going to be like, oh, wait a minute. Was that person with the stick in that other scene? Was that not an old lady? Was that actually Norman? Was I actually onto something? Hold on. We got to go all, yeah, wait a minute. So that was Norman, right? It wasn't? I don't know. Like, they look so similar. So maybe I was right. I was like, oh, that character stood out to me. I guess maybe it was because that was Norman, like, in the row. Yeah, it kind of looks, I think that they had something different up there, actually. I'm not sure, but they still have the backpack, so, like, anyway, don't worry about me, guys. But yeah, I love this scene because all the demons come out. But again, you can't tell if they're human or not. Like, they have seemed to disguise themselves a little better if they are human. Because, like, with this guy, he's wearing a scarf, so you can't see the neck. With Ray, you can see the neck a lot. And even with this guy, I kind of see a smidge of something. That could just be the rest of his mask. We need, like, a close-up, right? But you guys understand what I'm saying? Like, they are hiding themselves a lot better to cover, like, any flesh, where Ray has his whole chin out in some of the scenes, right? So I think that that's interesting, right? And then I kind of feel bad for these guys that they died. Like, at first I was like, whoa, they're dead. But now that I'm actually, like, thinking about it, like, in my reaction, it was sort of like a shocking, like, oh, cool, like, they killed the bad guys, woohoo. But at the same time, I'm like, I kind of feel bad because now, like, who's gonna take care of their brothers? Like, who's gonna take care of the brothers that are just, like all those little kids alone, right? Did they deserve to die? I mean, I guess, here's the thing, right? Like, there was no way that these guys were gonna stop pursuing them. And so it's one of those, like, necessary evil things. Like, I feel like there's a lot of, like, moral debate that could happen here. Like, on one hand, could you have really just let them go? Like, could you have traded them with them knowing that these kids, like, are the kids, especially if maybe they'll tell the whole town, right, that these kids are around, right, and it wouldn't be safe for them anymore. Like, really was the only option to kill them? Like, I'm inclined to say yeah. Like, I feel like that the only option was to kill them to some extent. And so with that in mind, like, I don't know, it's getting to be very morally gray because I feel bad for these guys because, like, what's gonna happen to their brothers now? Like, are their brothers just gonna die? Like, what's gonna happen with all of that? And so I really wonder about that aspect of all this, but at the same time, like, I feel like that there's no way that these guys would have stopped pursuing them. And so it's that trade-off, right? Like, you need to kill to some extent in order to survive, and it's gonna be a very interesting question, right? Like, these guys, like, they had families and stuff, like, they had, like, brothers to feed, and they were killed for it, I guess. And I feel like that it's not really even Emma and Norman's fault, but rather it's the representation of, like, how the whole system is treating these people, is that it's forcing people into desperation, like the demons into desperation, where they do bad things, where all of this could be solved if the nobles weren't, like, again, rich and greedy. That's how I'm imagining it. And I thought that this was a really nice reveal. I mean, I knew that Norman was coming, right? Like, I have been saying, right? And so I'm pretty validated, but I knew that that man wasn't dead. Like, I knew he was coming. And so really, now what I'm looking forward to, like, first of all, I love, like, Emma's expression, like, seeing Norman. Like, she starts to cry. Even though she acted like he was still alive to the kids, I think, to some extent, like, I feel like that maybe she didn't really believe that, because she just, oh, I love her facial expression in this. Like, Ray genuinely looks surprised. Like, he's like, really? Like, you're alive? I didn't think we'd be seeing you. Because you see his face every time Emma's like, don't worry. Like, Norman will be back with us soon, right? And Ray's just like, I'm looking away. I do not see it. Like, that happens a lot, right? And so I feel like that in this case, it's one of those things where, like, he's genuinely surprised, but I feel like that she almost didn't believe it. Like, I feel like at one point she lost hope, and so now to see him, she's, like, so overwhelmed. And I feel like that she's also crying too, not just because she's overwhelmed to see him, but we also need to think of the promise that she made to Norman. Like, I feel like part of it, she could be crying because Norman has finally come back and she has failed. Like, she thinks that she has failed as a leader, and so I feel like that it's like she's so overwhelmed emotionally with seeing Norman, because I think that part of her, like, started to lose hope about ever seeing him again, so it's less surprise and more of, like, that, like, more of that, like, flooding with emotion, because she really didn't think it would be true, whereas Ray's just, like, surprised Pikachu face. Like, he didn't think it would be true either, but he had long accepted it, where I feel like that Emma didn't necessarily, but I feel like that she could also be crying because she is like, oh, fuck, Norman's back, and I failed him. Like, I failed Norman and I failed our promise to Norman to keep everyone safe because we are like barely surviving. So I feel like that could be part of it too. And then we get this and then we go, wee! And then it's like Norman and then he says, I finally found you. So he's been looking for a while. And so I guess I'll end this off with like some theories, okay? So I have some theories to how this came about. I think that it's definitely humans with him, just based on how they're dressed. I feel like that they're doing a lot to cover the skin, so I feel like that that's probably it. I feel like that it could be possible that these are escapees from the house, and so they have all sort of found each other in a way. They're probably adults now. Maybe it's even like 4 kids from the same house who all escaped together, or 2 and 2, right? And they met up with each other, and now they go around breaking out kids, right? And so what I imagine is on the day that Norman was being shipped out, what happened is that these guys basically, you know, came in, killed the demons, like took Norman, and then like ran away basically. Because I had this whole idea that Norman was going to be trained to be a soldier, and so basically what would have happened is that Emma and the kids, like one day when they go to one of the houses to stop one of the shipments, they'd be confronted by demons and the soldier would actually shoot the demons instead, and it would be this whole, why would the soldier like shoot the demons? And then it would be like, hello, I'm Norman, like I'm on your side now, right? So I had that whole theory, but actually, like, what if that's actually what happened to Norman? Like, he never trained to be a soldier or anything, but instead, like, you know, that has happened to other kids maybe. Like, either that they were soldiers and that they, you know, pulled an Uno reverse card, right? Like, because obviously we see, like, adult men, I guess, like, being soldiers and stuff like that. And so it could have been one of those things where they were chosen to be soldiers and they did exactly what I just said, broke Norman out and they all ran away. Or they could be escaped kids, now adults, who go around like saving kids like once in a while, right? Like maybe they were like, all right, we're gonna go save Norman, and they plucked him out and now we're here. Like that's sort of what I imagine. And so I feel like that is basically one of those two things. Like I feel like it's either adult escapees, right? Or it's like soldier escapees, if that makes sense. Like either the adults that were soldiers built a little resistance group and they ran away, or these are escapees that have been living in the wild and like have now decided to like slowly like break out kids, and maybe they even cover it up as stealing. Like there have been, you know, stealings, there have been stolen things happening, there have been robberies, what am I saying? There have been stealings, there have been robberies happening, right? Like what if the robberies, like they think, oh, like demons are climbing over the wall and like stealing children in the middle of the night, like we gotta up security from the farm, right? Like what if those like robberies aren't demons stealing kids like for food, but they're these guys, right? Like they're these guys stealing kids, right? And like the whole cover-up story is that it's rogue demons stealing from the farms, when instead it's like this little resistance group breaking out some shipments. So yeah, I have a lot of theories about how Norman like got escaped and all that stuff. Like I think that it would be interesting if like he did make a deal with Isabel to like, oh yeah, I'll train to become a soldier, and then he got broken out. But I feel like that maybe it's more likely that a shipment was genuinely gonna come out and then somebody stopped him, whether it was like the human resistance group or like what have you. Like I feel like that it's gonna be really fascinating and we're gonna get more into the human element. Like I feel like that we're not done with the demons saving the kids, but rather that this is like we're introducing like human adult characters. That is how I see like what's going on right now, is that we've sort of strayed away from, oh, like there's demons out there like Sanjun and Majika, and Norman got saved by demons like those. I think we're stepping away from that, and more so we are sort of going into like human resistance, like either like adults, maybe even like mothers, like adult women as well. Like we don't really know, right? Like I just assumed the fathers, because the problem with the mothers is that the mothers have like the heart monitor and all that stuff, which will explode if they leave the farms. And so that's why I'm assuming that these are all like fathers, right? Like if they're like the soldier theory, right? Like the idea that these men became soldiers, and then after they became soldiers, they defected, and now they go around and they like steal kids, but they do it like slowly, so people think it's like demon like stealing for food, instead of what it really is, and like slowly like saving kids and building up a resistance, right? And so I feel like that the mothers could not necessarily be part of that, but if it's just like escapee kids, right? Like there could be women because like escapee kids, obviously, as we've seen, can be like either gender. It's just the thing about like the adults in the world that's a little more complicated, because the only adults that we think can go out into the world at the moment are the soldiers, and those are the men, as far as we know. Like the women are basically confined to the farms because of the heart monitors and stuff. So yeah, just wanted to explain that. So I think that we're getting into human territory, whether these are adult soldiers or they're escapee kids. Like, I feel like that this is gonna be really interesting. I'm really, really excited for next episode. I can't wait to find out like how all of this went down. I'm really excited. But yeah, I think that that is all from me, guys. I hope that you guys enjoyed the discussion. I know that it's sort of like, I don't know, like it's sort of a cop-out to be like, well, it could be this theory or it could be this one, because it basically like is almost certainly either or. But I feel like that the show could still surprise us. But yeah, those are basically the only two ideas I have right now, but I am certain that it's probably some humans. It doesn't seem like it's demons to me. It seems like humans in disguise, right? And so I feel like that that's gonna be super, super fascinating. I hope that you guys weren't expecting me to have like more like tinfoil hat theories, because really, I'm really unsure. Like, I'm just like, okay, they're human, they're either soldiers or escapee kids. Like, that's it. Like, that's all I got. So yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed. That is all from me, and I will see you guys next week. I'm really, really excited. Bye, guys!